So welcome back, guys. So now we're going to talk about mounts, and there's a plethora of mounts, a cornucopia, if you will, of mounts for camera lenses.
Yeah, so the camera lenses and the camera itself has to have the corresponding mount.
Yes.
So we're going to go over a couple of different ones from going from the past to the present.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, there was a bayonet mount. This is what it would be on the lens. It would also be on the camera that would stick into the camera and turn and lock into place.
Mm-hmm.
On zoom lenses, all these are very easy to put on and off, and this would be a bayonet mount. When they became Super 35 or Super 16, bayonet went away. It was not possible because the diameter would not allow you to fully cover that chip, or in this case, it would be also the film gate. It would not be able to do that.
Okay.
In the time to make this jump to PL, they had a bayonet to PL adapter, which it would go into like this, turn around and snap in, and then that would go into the camera on a PL mount. So if you weren't even shooting super and you had a camera that had a PL mount, you still could use these lenses.
Got it.
Now, after that came around, you know, before around that time, you also had what they call here a BNCR mount.
It's like a serious mount.
This was where, as you can see, that is PL of this diameter. If I was to give you an example of its sizing, for the light to come in, that's the size of PL. For BNCR, you can obviously see it's a lot larger. That larger diameter allowed you to cover many different things that it wouldn't do before, which would be, you know, anything that's super, or in this case, anamorphics were used in BNCR mount. It's a better mount for coverage because as technology is going, it probably is going to go more in this direction because you need to have bigger openings to get more light for bigger chips.
Okay.
When in the 80s, when PL became like the standard and we're going to do it that way for everything, that's sufficed for Super 35.
Okay.
And now, of course, when we're going into 8K and above, this might serve as a problem. We don't know yet because it's still the bleeding edge of technology.
Right.
So what we have here, just to give you an example, every camera has its own corresponding mount.
Yes. This would be, in this case, an Epic PL mount. It is made, and it's also an intelligent mount where there's little sensors that has a chip that if you're using the intelligent lenses like the Cooke SIs or certain master primes, you can actually get all the lens data and record it into the metadata. Okay.
And that's why they would have this type of thing. And also on film cameras, they had the same thing where you could have a readout on the side of your cine tape that would tell you your distance, your stop, and all the things in case you had to do and recreate it or give it to your post people or your visual effects people.
Okay.
Every time you put a mount on any camera, you have to change what they call either the depth, the flange focal depth of the camera, or in digital cameras would be the back focus.
All right.
If I was to put just this PL on here, I'm married to only PL. And if I had any of these other idea of mounts, it wouldn't work, and I'd have to take the physical mount off, put another one on there, and then they're not all perfect, and you'd have to always change the back focus.
Right.
This particular mount is called the Universal A mount. You put the base onto there, and then you put the insert that you require for the lens you're using, and you never have to change the back focus or the flange focal depth of the camera again once you set it. This would be a PL that would go into it, and you could pull this off. You could take a BNCR mount, stick it onto there. You can pull that off. You could take an October 19, this is a mount like a Russian mount, They call it October 19. Stick that in there, and still nothing is changing. Pull that off. You can take a Canon mount and put that in there, and it works for Canon. Or you would actually can use a Nikon mount.
So let me ask you, with this universal mount, it would save thousands and thousands of dollars in rehousing fees if you wanted to rehouse old lenses that have different mounts.
Yes, instead of well, there's pros and cons to rehousing older lenses because you make the barrel all standardized, the markings become better. But if you don't want to spend all of that money to do that, yes, you could actually use this universal mount with whatever lens that you have.
Right.
Once you set it, then you just put the insert and you put the lens on it. So you could be on a set and have 5 different exotic lenses and just put the insert on and say, okay, I'm going to use that one. That's great. Take that one off. What's that one? Okay, that's October 19. Okay, great. Put it on. And not have to worry about anything being a back focus or the fact of a high expense to buy.
So to rehouse an old lens can range anywhere from what, $5 grand?
$5 grand a piece,
easily, if not more, depending on the on the condition.
Exactly.
And then this costs
a couple grand.
A couple grand
with all the pieces.
With everything in it. So for a couple grand, if you have a whole bunch of sets, instead of spending $30,000, $20,000.
Yes, $50,000 could be on rehousing lenses.
Depending on how many lenses you have.
Exactly.
This could save you. So that alone is
it's a wonderful little invention, and I'm surprised that it actually works so well. I bought one as a test, and then I bought much more after that part. Actually, too, is Panavision makes their own style of mount, and if you see here, the diameter. This is a PL of the industry standard right now. Panavision is even smaller than PL.
Interesting.
And
now, this Universal doesn't have a Panavision.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does?
Yes, it has every mount made.
Okay.
It even has a Leica mount.
Jesus, a Leica mount.
whatever mount that you happen to have, they're going to make a piece for that to put it on there in the system.
That's crazy.
In my case, I bought all the pieces that needed to work with the lenses I had.
Gotcha.
But they are vast. So you can see that once a standard became a certain way, then every lens that came out and every camera that came out had the corresponding mounts. And then if you want to still keep that lens in an inventory that you can actually rent out, you had to modify something.
Got it.
And in this case, since now all these mounts are not intelligent, which means if you wanted that technical data from the lens and that lens has it, it's not going to work with that. Also, the same thing goes with your Canon and Nikon lenses. They're not going to have data, and some of these actually don't. The lenses, their iris is always closed. In order to compensate for that, they put a little screw here. And as I tighten that screw, it pushes the iris leaf release, and it keeps the iris open or closed depending on what I want.
So they pretty much thought of everything.
So what I could do is I could open the iris completely and then use NDs.
Neutral density filters.
Neutral density filters or a polarizer to compensate for the lens being wide open.
Well, I hope you guys learned a lot about mounts, because I definitely did. I always thought there was just a handful of them, but there's how many mounts are there over the course?
There's a lot more than what we have here now, but we're just showing you a couple of them. And these mounts, if it was a film camera, for instance, it wouldn't have a screw to change your back focus.
Right.
You would have to put a physical shim behind that to compensate, because the standard is 52 millimeters is your lens settings.
Right.
And then nowadays it's electronic and it's a screw that moves that, but nothing changed yet with lenses.
Right.
Every lens has a shim in it. And when they get worn or they change, you actually need to change that shim. Some shims are metal.
You have a CD case full of shims.
A CD case. So here's a 28 to 70. These are Zeiss. Arri makes and Zeiss makes plastic shims.
Mm-hmm.
And for the rest of the world, it's probably fine. But for here in Miami, plastic shims with humidity and salt and the air and everything like that, they fall apart. So we tried to go and make them out of metal. So here would be an Arri Zeiss one that we had done in Russia, which is laser cut, and you see it says 5. That's 5/1000ths of an inch. So this would be replaced inside the back of the lens to maintain the proper 52 millimeters. The only way you can ever know that is you would have to have a collimator or some form of device that could tell you how far or how far do you have to add a shim, or in some cases, how far you have to pull a shim out.
Okay.
And that would be, once you knew what it would be, you would take your caliper and you would find the proper shim, measure it out, and then take apart the lens, the back part. The back part of the lens, actually, on all lenses, has these screws. When you pull that, which would be the mount, that if you wanted to make this another mount from them, you could just put it, you would literally, like, you know, not this one because this is made for Cook, but they make for them, you would put it on there and it would be a different mount. Underneath that is where the shims are.
Right.
So you buy a lens from somebody, and unless you knew it was calibrated, you wouldn't have any idea. And the only way to test that is with something like this or other devices that can look at that, and then you would know, all right, I have to shim it a little bit one way or another, because if you don't shim this correctly, when a camera system, everything is shimmed at infinity. If this is out of focus, infinity might be there. Or infinity might be beyond infinity, which means the whole scale will never line up to the numbers that you're trying to pull focus on. And
Causing havoc.
Causing havoc, because if you're going to be on a Steadicam with a remote focus unit, and you go to rack focus and it says 2 feet, and in this case it was off by, let's say, 1,000ths or 2,000ths, one way or direction, it might be a foot or 2 feet off, and your shot will be out of focus.
And then you're fired.
So the most important thing to know is that you can calibrate all your lenses to be 52 millimeters right on infinity. Once you know those lenses are done that way, you have to make sure that the cameras, the back focus is the same as what the lens is. When the two of them match, then everything works well and you're in focus the whole time. And this works for zooms or primes.
Okay. Very cool. So we'll see you guys in the next lesson.